Hi, this is Claudia Carella, and today we're tackling one issue at a time. We are joined by Stuart Alderoty, Chief Legal Officer at Ripple. Welcome, Stuart.
Thank you for having me.
We will be discussing regulating crypto assets. Where are we now with the crypto assets regulation, and how do you assess the different regulatory approaches to blockchain technology taken by the US, the EU, and the UK?
I think we're seeing great progress within the past year and a half in terms of policymakers all over the world finally realizing that the crypto economy is here to stay. It's an innovation that is not going to go away. And rather than try to ignore it or regulate it out of existence, we need to create clear regulatory frameworks where the innovation can grow, but also at the same time where we can protect consumers, protect the integrity of the market, and to the best we can, keep bad actors out. But there's a couple of approaches. There's the approach that the EU has been following, adopting MiCA, which is a comprehensive set of regulations that would span the entire 27 states of the European Union. Obviously, we need to get to level 2 rulemaking at the individual state level, but it is a place where those operating in the business of crypto or the crypto economy can approach a region, understands what the laws, the rules, and the regulations are, subject themselves to regulatory supervision, and conduct their business. We've seen that approach in Singapore with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, their licensing framework. We've seen it in the UAE. We've seen it in the UK through the FCA. We've seen it in other regions throughout the world where, again, moving to a licensing framework where we have clear rules and regulations that will be followed under the supervision of a regulator. In the US, unfortunately, we're falling behind. Usually in the past, when it comes to innovation, technology, entrepreneurship, the US has been a leader. But in this economy, the US has fallen behind. They've taken an approach where they have tried to create regulations through enforcement. It's called regulation by enforcement. But before you can enforce, you need to enforce rules. You need to understand what those rules are. Without clear rules, if you're going to try to enforce in the absence of rules, you're going to create chaos. Good regulation, consistently applied, should lead to predictable results, not unpredictable results. In the US, unfortunately, for the past many years, we've been siding on the side of regulation by enforcement rather than adopting clear regulatory rules and a framework. That's changing. And it's changing, I think, rapidly, although the legislative process still takes some time. Just this week in the United States, the House of Representatives voted in a bipartisan fashion, meaning both the Republicans with support of the Democrats, in favor of a crypto market structure bill, which recognizes crypto and the business around crypto as a legitimate business, and again, creates guardrails that will protect consumers, protect the integrity of the market, and as best we can, keep bad actors out. And the fact that that bill has finally made it to the floor of Congress, has been supported by both Republicans and Democrats. It still has a journey to go. It has to go to the Senate and eventually to the president's desk, I think is a very pivotal moment in the US approach to crypto. But again, I think the US is playing catch up now to the UK, to the EU, to the UAE, and jurisdictions like Singapore.
So in this context of rapid technological advancement, how can these regulatory frameworks keep pace with innovation without stifling it? And what is the role Europe should play in spearheading effective regulation?
So I think when it comes to regulating new technology, it's important that you don't regulate the technology because policymakers will never move as quickly as the technology is developing, and policymakers will never fully understand the technology. So I think it's important to look at the activity and the outcomes of the application of the technology. and what are the risks of the activity and the outcomes of the application of the technology, and that's what we should be regulating. Same risk, same regulatory outcomes. So again, if you're dealing with crypto, you have crypto intermediaries, you have crypto innovators, you have crypto software developers. What are they doing? What's the risk that they are creating? And how do we solve for the risks through policy making rather than trying to get into the technology itself and regulate the technology?
And speaking of the frameworks, what are the most significant gaps and challenges that still need to be addressed in the regulation of digital assets and blockchain technology to ensure both innovation and consumer protection?
Well, we're still in early days. So I think we need to get the basic building blocks still built. Again, even in the EU with MiCA, once it's adopted, we still have the member states need to get to the level 2 rulemaking. So I still think we need the fundamental building blocks. Beyond the fundamental building blocks, there are some very complicated issues that need to be solved for. If you're dealing with any decentralized blockchain technology, you have to balance the interest of privacy against the interest of supervision. How do you do that in a world where many transactions, at least on the blockchain, are pseudo-anonymous? How do you keep bad actors out and still allow the technology to operate? How do you deal with issues of taxes and the applications of the tax laws to these new technology? I think all of those issues need to be solved for, but first we need the building blocks of a basic set of laws, rules, and regulations. Once we have that, and we're making great progress in, again, those jurisdictions we've talked about, the EU, the UK, the UAE, Singapore, Japan, I can name a few more. Once we get those basic building blocks, then I think we can start solving for these more complicated issues.
As you very well know, there are many ongoing legal challenges faced by cryptocurrency companies. Do you believe, and you have answered this already a little, do you believe a regulatory approach based on clear rules is more effective than one based on enforcement actions? And what are the implications of each approach?
Well, I think you can anticipate my answer to that clear rules are clearly favored over regulation by enforcement. But that's just not an opinion. I think the facts have proven out that the regulation by enforcement agenda or strategy has failed. If you look at the damage caused by the FTXs of the world and some of the other bad actors in the space, I think that happened not because there was too much regulation, that happened because there was too little regulation, and it forced those actors to offshore places where perhaps the regulation was not as rigorous as it should have been. So rather than inviting these actors in, putting them through the scrutiny of disciplined regulation, but appropriately measured regulation, where we can monitor bad actors from good actors, protect consumers, protect the integrity of the market, keep bad actors out. In the absence of regulation, we actually breed the opportunity for harm to consumers. And regulation by enforcement, at least in the US, which has been used as a substitute for rational policy making, it's been through that, under that umbrella of regulation by enforcement, that this parade of horribles has happened. I think that is now washed out of the system, and those left standing again are looking to embrace rational regulation and work in cooperation with their supervisors.